Chapter 1. Reincarnated X Transfer, Student New Life. When Badr came to his senses, he was already standing at the podium. This is the new transfer student joining our class today. Please introduce yourself to your classmates. A burly, balding teacher stood beside him, and the students sat at their desks below him. At the podium, Badr felt a bit dizzy. Moments before, he had been out on the street, saving a little girl who was crossing the street recklessly. He vaguely heard the brake squeal, and then was enveloped in a warm light. And then he found himself here. Looking at the curious looks of the students below, Badr couldn't help but speculate. Was this heaven? Should he have ascended to heaven after saving the little girl? I thought I was seeing angels. After scanning the room, Badr couldn't help but express his thoughts. He was struggling with the shock of discovering his death, his emotions particularly complex. The teacher and students were momentarily stunned. Someone couldn't help but laugh. "What's the matter with you, buddy? Are you still sleeping and dreaming?" Hearing the laughter, Badr regained some composure and began to reflect on his current situation. It was true that his consciousness still existed, but he was unsure if this was reincarnation or ascension. After all, this was his first experience with death, and he had no previous experience. But he might as well get used to it since he was here. Badr lifted his head and instinctively displayed a standardized smile that he had practiced countless times. "My name is Badr. I'm pleased to meet you all." The introduction was quite ordinary. The students immediately frowned. He seemed to be another boring person. Except for a few girls who admired Badr's looks, everyone quickly lost interest in the new transfer student. "All right, Badr, you can sit in the empty seat in the back row by the window." The teacher casually assigned Badr a seat, adjusted his glasses, and picked up a chalk. "Next, everyone, take out your textbooks and turn to page 52. Badr maintained his smile and walked to his assigned seat. After sitting down, he noticed that no one was paying attention to him. His smile quickly faded, and he became reserved and silent. Putting his bag in the drawer, Badr checked his pockets and took stock of his belongings. These included his cell phone, student ID, 2 keys, and banknotes. His eyes fell first on the bills in an unfamiliar denomination of 1,350. The coins were all 50s, suggesting that the 1,000+ yuan didn't seem very valuable, more like the yen. Turning the phone to face himself, Badr saw his familiar face reflected on the screen. He nodded in satisfaction. "Good, still my face, still good looking." After unlocking the phone with his fingerprint, a photo of himself riding a bicycle appeared on the screen. In the picture, Badr was smiling brightly. Badr stared at the photo briefly, feeling that the smile didn't suit him. How could he smile like that? He shook his head and changed the wallpaper with a few taps. The student ID read Kuo Academy, 2nd year, Class 1, and the home address was attached, clarifying the origin of the 2 keys. Badr thought for a moment. Based on the situation, it seemed that his soul had been transferred to the body of someone in another dimension. Thus, after death, life would be reincarnated. Badr's gaze became unfocused momentarily before he sighed and put aside his complicated feelings. The current result was quite good. At least it was a new beginning. At that moment, Badr's peripheral vision caught sight of 2 people who seemed to be staring at him. He casually turned his head and saw that 2 gorgeous girls were indeed focused on him. The girl on the left had long, fiery red hair and clear eyes that radiated a cold and mature aura, almost an enchanting quality that made it hard to look away. The girl beside her had her black hair tied up in a high ponytail and a gentle smile on her beautiful face, giving off a warm impression. Although the red-haired girl slightly overshadowed her beauty, she was also stunning. Moreover, her figure was even more striking than the red-haired girl's. The 2 girls had their unique charms. Badr's eyes met theirs for 2 seconds before he quickly looked away. These 2 girls were beautiful, he thought, assuming they were just curious about him as a new transfer student. Unbeknownst to him, Rias and Aquino had already been watching his behavior closely. Both of them had noticed that Badr possessed a tremendous power that even these devils were astonished by. Gear. It must be the power of a sacred gear, no doubt. Rias and Aquino exchanged glances and, with tacit understanding, averted their eyes as if nothing had happened. The mundane school day he was past quickly. Badr visited the school's surveillance room, made up a story about losing his bicycle, and eventually retrieved it through the surveillance footage. He then returned to his own home in this world. Unlocking the door with the key, he was greeted by a slightly cluttered room. Pursing his lips, Badr glanced at the shrine on the wall, which contained portraits of a middle-aged couple. From the previous conversation with the teacher at school, he had learned that his parents had been killed by a truck in this world. Damn truck that killed my parents. I'll remember that grudge. Badr returned expressionless to the decorated bedroom, which contained a computer. Noticing the trash can full of tissues, he raised an eyebrow. When he turned on the computer, he found over 100 study materials in a hidden folder, which amused him. Opening a few randomly, he saw subjects like academy silence, widows, grocery store owners, and guards. He grinned. Looks like the previous owner was into otaku stuff. After closing the computer and tidying up a bit, Badr started his workout. After sweating it out and showering, he lay on his bed, arms behind his head, staring at the ceiling in a daze. The school had been quiet today. A few boys had come up to chat, and a few girls had tried to flirt, but Badr handled them with a decent smile. It was all the same at school or in society, what people called atmosphere. Badr had a disdainful attitude towards these social interactions, but one shouldn't be too out of place. Being too different could lead to exclusion, which would be particularly troublesome. So he had developed a skill for polite pretense. As long as he maintained a balance of being neither too close nor too distant, he could stay in his normal state without getting involved. Maintaining the status quo seemed to be quite satisfying. That's what Badr thought. 2 days later, when he suddenly got a girlfriend. To be precise, a girl he didn't know suddenly confessed to him. From the girl's fragmented words, Badr could confirm that even the previous owner did not know her. Her name was Amano Yuma. She was a sweet and cute JK, high school girl, who looked pure and adorable. Standing on a bridge bathed in the setting sun, the girl looked at Badr as if gathering immense courage and said shyly, "WL, my name is Amano Yuma. I saw you at the school gate yesterday, and since then, would you consider going out with me?" She spoke hesitantly, her shyness obvious because she couldn't look him in the eye. Badr was stunned. He never expected a girl to confess to him despite his current situation. He thought to himself, what is going on here? Could he have moved the heavens and touched the sacred so that a heavenly being was sent down to be his girlfriend? He smiled inwardly, although he wasn't impressed. According to Amano Yuma, she had fallen in love with him at first sight and had come to ask for a relationship. Love at first sight? Asking for a relationship? More like asking for mating. At least that would be more believable. Does pure love still exist in this world? He didn't believe it. Maintaining his usual smile, Badr remained clear-headed and even a little indifferent. To be confessed by a beautiful girl. Impossible. He suspected that this girl must have some reason for approaching him. He wanted to find out why she was interested in him. After all, he was alone now, with nothing left but the 280 square meter house and the 40 million compensation from his parents' death. Could it be that she was physically attracted to him? If so, she shouldn't be so cautious. He could lie down to explore. Badr seemed pleasantly surprised and agreed to Amano Yuma's request. So they became a couple. So, tomorrow is a day off. Badr, shall we go shopping together? Amano Yuma looked especially happy. Her big, sparkling eyes were filled with anticipation and a hint of a pout as she looked at Badr. Badr smiled gently and replied warmly, "Sure, let's meet tomorrow. I won't be absent." Amano Yuma's expression immediately brightened. "Be careful on the way." Badr smiled and reached out to smooth her hair. His gentle smile was particularly captivating. Seeing his smile, Amano Yuma's face also showed a mixture of shyness and joy. As she walked away, she turned back every few steps, clearly immersed in the romance, and walked away reluctantly. Badr maintained his warm smile and watched Amano Yuma's figure gradually fade. His gentle smile quickly faded when she was entirely out of sight, leaving his face expressionless. He stood silently for a few seconds, remembering Amano Yuma's behavior, but finding no clues. Finally, He glanced meaningfully in the direction she had gone and turned away. He wanted to see what kind of trouble this woman was up to. Chapter 2. Rainier from tender to terrifying. A petite but adorable girl with short white hair suddenly appeared when Badr left. She looked in the direction Badr had gone, dialed a number, and the display showed President Reyes. "Hello, Kaneko. Have you found anything?" Reyes' voice came through. "As you predicted, President, the fallen angel is preparing to attack him." Kaneko replied quietly. "All right, good work. You can come back now." Kaneko nodded and ended the call, suddenly remembering Badr's strange behavior, which puzzled her momentarily. It just felt Badr's behavior was a bit frightening. The next day, Badr got up early, freshened up, and prepared to attend the meeting above with Amano Yuma. As he passed the living room and reached the door, he suddenly stopped, turned around, and walked over to the coffee table. He put a fruit knife on the coffee table and put it into his pocket. It might seem excessive to be cautious with a high school girl, but Badr found it even more unbelievable that a beautiful stranger would suddenly declare her affection for him. It was tough to believe. Maybe it's some scam or school bullying. As soon as he followed her to a secluded place, her accomplices would probably appear to threaten him, and so on. Badr thought that way, admitting that he might be a bit paranoid. After all, she was only a high school student. The worst-case scenario would be some connection with the local troublemakers. And if Amano Yuma was a pure-hearted girl who wanted a sweet school romance, then he would appreciate and reward her appropriately in the future. Badr pursed his lips, got on his bike, and arrived at the agreed place. From a distance, he saw the stunning figure of Amano Yuma waiting silently. Badr stopped in front of the girl and apologized. "Sorry for being late, Yuma." Deliberately. "That's all right. I just got here myself," Amano Yuma said with a happy smile, utterly unconcerned about Badr's tardiness. She stepped forward, linked her arm with his, and said, "Let's go." "He okay?" Badr smiled softly and began his date with the girl. They walked around the mall, picked out attractive clothes for each other, took a picture in a photo booth, and Badr bought the girl a gift, a headband. They also stopped at a nearby dessert shop for some treats. They chatted and laughed throughout the day, with Badr always smiling gently and staying by the girl's side. To outsiders, they seemed like a couple deeply in love. Soon, time passed quickly as they enjoyed their time together, and the sky darkened. They left the street and strolled towards a nearby park that was less populated. When they reached the deserted park, Amano Yuma suddenly took a few quick steps forward, turned around in front of a fountain, and looked at Badr. "Badr, as a memento of our first date, may I make a request?" Amano Yuma stood with her hands behind her back, her demeanor charming, and looked at Badr with a smile. "Of course you can." Badr smiled and put his right hand in his pocket. Amano Yuma's charming smile gradually changed to something more sinister. "Could you please die?" Badr's smile faltered slightly and then disappeared altogether. He quickly took 2 steps back, his face darkening. "What did you say?" Amano Yuma's smile turned cold, her former playfulness wholly gone. She came closer and repeated, "I said, could you please die now?" As her words fell, her figure suddenly changed. Her clothes quickly disappeared, and Badr saw her stunning figure for a moment. Soon, black robes covered her pale skin, and a pair of black wings suddenly spread behind her. She raised her hand, and a glowing orb condensed in her palm, quickly forming into a light spear with blinding flashes along its shaft. Seeing Amano Yuma transform into an unknown black-winged being wielding a light spear was a massive shock to Badr. Looking at the black-winged Amano Yuma and the light spear in her hand, and feeling the fruit knife in his pocket, Badr couldn't help but think, what the hell is this world? Scatter your ashes. This sudden turn of events was entirely beyond Badr's expectations. The situation was far from the school bullying or scam he had expected. It was a god-devil city. Badr was confident he could handle a few local thugs, but was utterly at a loss in the face of such supernatural forces. He had never imagined that such supernatural forces existed in this world. He didn't have time to think about why this woman wanted to kill him. The most important thing now was how to survive this encounter. Running away was the best option, Since she decided to strike in this deserted place, she probably wouldn't dare to act in front of people. So Badr immediately remembered his escape route. He remembered the terrain from when he first arrived, intended for a quick escape after a fight, and now it was directly applicable. Explosive bomb! Badr shouted, suddenly pulling an object out of his pocket and throwing it at Amano Yuma. Hearing Badr scream, the fallen angel was startled and instinctively dodged the flying object, only to see a phone smash into the fountain's railing and shatter into pieces. Amano Yuma was momentarily stunned, then quickly realized what had happened. Turning around, she saw that Badr had indeed escaped. Ridiculous! With a cold sneer, the fallen angel Amano Yuma soared into the air and quickly caught up with Badr, aiming the light spear directly at his heart. As she flew, the sound of the wind intensified, accompanied by a mighty wind pressure. Badr instinctively sensed the danger and immediately evaded. The light spear hit the ground with a thunderous crash. The ground exploded, and as the debris scattered, Badr, who had just finished rolling and was about to flee, was thrown into the air by the shock wave. The fallen angel sneered. Badr's speed seemed pitifully slow to her. With a flick of her wrist, the light spear flew back into her hand. She flapped her wings and swooped down on Badr. Thud! The light spear plunged right into Badr's body. Badr first felt a numbness in his waist, followed by a piercing pain that exploded in his mind, a premonition of death overwhelming him. His body had been pierced. He was going to die. At that moment, Badr's mind was in turmoil, but as someone who had died before, he wasn't overly afraid of death. Maybe he would be reborn after dying this time as well. It was just too frustrating to die so quickly. At that moment, Badr's anger rose. He turned his head and, seeing the fallen angel so close, suddenly lunged at her, clinging to her and hanging on to her. Filthy insect! Get off me! The fallen angel was enraged and hit Badr with two fierce elbows, causing him to spit out blood. The next moment, Badr pulled out the fruit knife from his pocket and stabbed the fallen angel right in the eye socket. In pain, the fallen angel's sacred power erupted and immediately threw off the man clinging to her. Badr was hurled through the air by a powerful force while the fallen angel's face contorted in pain. She pulled the fruit knife out of her eye, and although the wound began to heal quickly, her expression was bleak. Had such an insect wounded her? It was a disgrace. Anyway, looking down at the fruit knife in her hand, which was nothing more than an ordinary piece of iron, she wondered how it could have pierced her body so quickly. On the other side, Badr coughed up blood and sat up, leaning on the ground. Though his body was covered in wounds, his gaze remained defiant. The gaping wound in his waist still throbbed painfully, and he could feel his life slipping away. However, after experiencing death just a few days ago, he was remarkably calm. Facing such a powerful supernatural being, it was only natural to be killed. The fact that he was able to hurt them was already extraordinary. He sat there, his black eyes coldly staring at the fallen angel. Damn it, not only did heaven fail to send him a beautiful angel as a girlfriend, but they also sent a fallen angel to kill him. All right, I'll remember that grudge. If you have the courage, don't let me be reincarnated. The fallen angel, Rainier, was pained by Badr's cold gaze. She saw no hint of fear in his expression, and when she remembered that such a weakling had injured her, her anger rose even higher. Furious, she raised her hand and summoned the light spear again, intending to obliterate Badr to vent her rage. Damned insect, be reduced to ashes. Blame the god who entrusted you with the sacred gear. In her fury, she launched the light spear as a streak of light towards Badr. Sacred gear? What nonsense! Is that why she wants to kill him? What a joke! He didn't have any sacred gear. Well, that's irrelevant now. If there was a sacred gear, it should come out and deal with this damn bitch. Badr stared at the streak of light, his emotions neutral. But when he perceived the next moment, time seemed to slow down. Just as the streak of light was about to reach him, a sudden flash of light appeared, and a silvery object materialized in front of him, directly blocking the incoming light spear. Boom! When the dust settled, Badr was still alive. He looked with mild surprise at the floating object protecting him. It was a shield, silver in color and with a distinct texture. Behind the shield was a silver sword with a red gem embedded in its hilt. The protector was indeed a set of swords and shields. Sacred gear? Rainier exclaimed in shock at seeing such a set of equipment appear out of nowhere and quickly backed away, her eyes full of caution. Badr was also surprised to find that he possessed a sacred gear. Unfortunately, he realized it too late. Chapter 3. The Fall of the Fallen Angel. At that moment, he ignored everything else and grabbed the sharp sword, pulling it out with all his might. Clang! The pleasant sound of the sword leaving its sheath echoed through the air, and Badr felt a surge of immense power enter his body. The pain in his body had already made Badr's eyes bloodshot. With a fierce glare, he channeled all his strength and swung the sword at the fallen angel with tremendous force. The blade shone brilliantly, forming an almost solid beam of light that descended with incredible force. The power of the sacred gear was genuinely terrifying. Rainier's eyes narrowed to pinpricks as a strong sense of danger overwhelmed her. She immediately tried to dodge, but as the sword light descended, an overwhelming pressure enveloped Rainier, pinning her to the ground and rendering her immobile. In the next instant, she felt an unstoppable force descending from above. The sacred power that clothed her body was instantly torn to shreds, and her delicate form was marked with numerous bloody scratches. "No! Master, save me!" Before she could finish her plea, the sword light had already consumed her. Stones and bricks flew everywhere as the parched ground was sliced open, creating a deep scar 3 meters long and radiating outward for dozens of meters. The sheer power was astounding. Black feathers exploded into the air and slowly drifted down. Is she dead? With that blow, her ashes might have been scattered. Watching the scene, Badr knelt on one knee, leaning on his sword. "No loss," he muttered as his consciousness neared its limit. As he was about to lose consciousness, footsteps began to echo softly. Tap, tap, tap. Badr struggled to lift his head, and before he completely lost consciousness, he saw a familiar figure with a flash of bright red hair dancing in the air. In the park, as dusk fell, Rhea stood before Badr's body, a hint of surprise and confusion on her beautiful face. To think that he defeated a fallen angel. It's truly unexpected. I've never heard of such a sacred weapon. The power of that blow had instantly killed the fallen angel, astonishing Rhys, who had been watching from a distance. If the full power of the sacred weapon were unleashed, it would far surpass most sacred gears. Although it might still fall short of the legendary sacred weapons, it should at least be able to hold its own. This kind of power is worthy of becoming my knight. Rhys's face smiled, adding to its cold beauty. She extended her hand, and a translucent crystal chess piece materialized above her palm. "Finally, I have found a suitable servant," Rhys muttered to herself as the chess piece flew out and landed firmly on Badr's body. The chess piece slowly began to merge with Badr's body, and an enormous amount of magical power roamed within him, starting the transformation from human to devil. However, Rhys soon discovered that the magical power seemed to be pulled away by some unknown force, being devoured rapidly. This unexpected development completely surprised Rhys. She realized that the ritual she was performing was about to fail. How could this be? Is it going to fail? Rhys' usually calm demeanor showed rare signs of anxiety. Compared to other kings, if it failed, she would forever lack the combat power of a knight, which could be a severe disadvantage in battle. Is it because the magical power has been consumed? Why is this happening? Rhys forced herself to remain calm. The ritual to imprint a servant shouldn't fail for no reason. She had to find out what was wrong. She carefully observed Badr's condition and finally discovered that the problem was that her magical power was not strong enough. Her eyebrows furrowed slightly as Rhys remembered a family record. If a found servant's potential is too great, the transformation ritual may fail, requiring several pawns to ensure its success. Is this Badr the type who needs several pieces to be transformed into a devil? Rias took a deep breath. She didn't have much time to hesitate, so she immediately took out another chess piece, a pawn. The only problem was that this was the first time she had used two different ranks of chessmen on one person simultaneously. Will having both knight and pawn cause any problems? Rias watched intently as the chess piece entered Badr's body, but no particular problems arose. Instead, Badr's absorption of magic power seemed to increase, as if he was enjoying the taste. Still, determined, the girl took out another pawn chess piece and placed it. When that wasn't enough, she added more. Badr was like a bottomless pit, constantly consuming the enormous magical power. Rias gritted her teeth and determinedly took out all the remaining pawn pieces and placed them on Badr. In the end, with 8 pawns and another knight, plus the previously used knight, 10 chessmen were finally successful. The stakes that Rias placed on Badr would amaze other kings. However, Rias was not discouraged but rather highly pleased. Such consumption showed Badr's immense potential. After successfully transforming Badr into her devil servant, Rias sighed in relief. Badr had already regained his breath. Now, all that remained was to heal his wounds, and he would be fully resurrected. Rias smiled, gazing at Badr as he lay there with growing affection, her expression like that of one who treasures a precious gem. The magic circle beneath her glowed, and she teleported Badr back to his home, laying him on the bed in the bedroom. With a flash of magical energy, Rias stripped off her clothes and peeled off Badr's tattered garments. She began to channel her magic through skin-to-skin contact to heal his wounds. With such a severe, penetrating injury, even though Badr was now a devil, Rias knew she would have her work cut out for her tonight. Badr awoke dizzy and disoriented, as if he were half asleep. He slowly opened his eyes and saw a somewhat familiar room. It resembled his home after his rebirth. Wait, didn't a bird-like creature with black wings kill him? Had he been reincarnated? Could his unique ability be continuous reincarnation? Badr instinctively touched his waist and found that the large piercing wound was gone. As he marveled at this, he felt the bed behind him shift. A delicate, white arm reached out from behind him and wrapped around his waist. He felt a smooth, warm body pressed against him. The sensation of softness and warmth was extraordinarily vivid. Badr's body tensed slightly as he realized that he was utterly unprotected. What's going on? Who is behind me? Questions flooded his mind. Hearing soft breathing behind him, he slowly turned his head. What met his eyes was the image of a beautiful red-haired girl. The girl was deeply asleep, her seductive red lips parted slightly, releasing a faint, pleasant musk that made him feel a surge of warmth. Badr recognized her. Rias Gremory, the most beautiful girl in the Kuo Academy, and her companion, Akino Himejima, were known as the first and second most admired beauties in the academy. What's going on? Badr was both confused and amazed. He sat up in bed and looked down at Rias. Her perfect, naked body was exposed entirely before him. Every inch of her skin was exceptionally pale and healthy, and her figure was breathtaking. This perfect devil body, Badr's throat tightened involuntarily, and he swallowed hard. What exactly happened? Wasn't he dead? Not only had he been reincarnated, but had he lost his virginity in the process? Damn it, I didn't feel anything. Struggling to recall the events, Badr was frustrated that he had no memory of the intimate moments that might have occurred. Damn, did I just miss out on a vast fortune? He frowned and, unable to resist, reached out a hand to Rias. His fingers touched Rias' soft skin. He pressed gently against her snow-white shoulder. The girl stirred slightly and slowly opened her eyes in the next moment. The sleeping beauty awoke. Her eyes, tinted with a faint green hue, were mesmerizingly beautiful, like pure gems that captivated anyone. Seeing Badr sitting up, Rias remarked lazily, "Is it morning already?" She sat up, unabashedly showing Badr her exquisite body, stretching lazily and yawning. Good morning. Good morning." Badr, remembering the last thing he saw before losing consciousness, Rias's figure, gathered his thoughts, and asked, "Did you save me last night?" Rias smiled, curling one of her elegant legs and resting her face on her knee, her gaze filled with affection as she looked at Badr as if admiring a rare treasure. "Of course. It took a lot of effort, you know." With a playful smile, she continued, "I am Rias Gremory, a devil and your master. Please take good care of me from now on, Badr." "Devil? Master?" Badr's mouth fell open as he struggled to process this shocking information, unable to contain his curiosity. What exactly is going on? Who was that winged creature yesterday, and why did it come to kill me? Chapter 4. Unveiling the Devil's World. After a moment of thought, Rias sighed. It would take a long time to explain. In short, the one who tried to kill you was a fallen angel. She approached you intending to check if you possessed the sacred gear. Once she confirmed its presence in you, she would have killed you. Sacred gear. Badr remembered the sword and shield that had suddenly appeared at the end, and it was with the power of that sword that he had obliterated a Mono Yuma. Why should such a thing be inside me? That is unknown. It said that many historically significant figures possessed such gears, which could signify sacred favor. Badr fell silent. After learning the truth, he realized how ridiculous his previous thoughts had been. He had mistaken a fallen angel for an imposter. TCH, who would have thought? The whole worldview was shattered. Anyway, thank you for saving me. But what does master mean? As Badr spoke, his eyes couldn't help but glance at Rias's body, and he reacted uncontrollably. This girl's figure is too breathtaking. Sitting defenseless on his bed. Who could resist? He cleared his throat and forced himself to look away. Despite the seductive scene, he hadn't forgotten that this was his first conversation with Rias. What a situation. This is pure science fiction. Noticing the desire in Badr's eyes, Rias couldn't help but smile smugly, allowing him to admire her body freely. She said with a laugh, "It means exactly what it says. I am your master. You have been reborn as my devil servant. By the way, you're also a real devil now." She got up from the bed, smiling as she approached Badr, her perfect figure becoming even more pronounced as she stood. "Why do you look away? Do you want to see my body? If you want to look, go ahead. Have devils no sense of shame?" Badr sighed inwardly, realizing he could no longer judge Rias's thoughts with human logic. But he liked her that way. As for becoming a devil, Badr didn't care. After all, he had just been attacked by a fallen angel, and his feelings towards angels were now wholly negative. So last night was just for healing, right? Badr picked up on the key word in Rias's words and made her laugh. Your human way of thinking is charming, but I can tell you that I am indeed still a virgin." She whispered seductively into Badr's ear, her seductive charm and wild, devilic aura unchanged, before walking over to get dressed without a hint of self-consciousness. Badr was momentarily stunned by Rias's provocation. He fell silent, quietly watching her dress, finding every move she made irresistibly seductive. "Can you help me button this?" Rias turned her back to Badr and gathered her fiery red hair before her chest, revealing her snow-white back. Badr raised an eyebrow, now calm and composed, and said, "I'd be delighted." He approached and helped Rias with her buttons, quickly putting on his clothes. Rias sat on the bed, pulled on short white socks, and said casually, "Later, you'll come to school with me. I'll introduce you to the other 2 members and sign you up for the club." "Okay." Having recognized Rias's abilities, Badr had no objections to her arrangements. He realized that the ordinary life he once had was gone forever. Seeing Rias's seductive body now covered in cloth, Badr went to open the curtains. Sunlight streamed into the room. He stood at the window, clenched his fist, and felt a power surge in his body, as if he had boundless energy. Could this be what Rias meant by the devil's body? Life is truly unpredictable. A few days ago, he was suddenly killed and transported to another world, and now, just a few days later, he was dead and resurrected as a devil. The impact of those few days had already far exceeded the sum of his previous 20 years. Rias brushed her long hair behind her and said, "Let's go. If we wait any longer, we'll be late." The 2 of them left together, heading for the school. Badr's house wasn't too far from the school, and many students headed that way as they approached. However, everyone seemed stunned to see Rias walking with Badr, unsure how he could be so close to her. Rias was known as the most beautiful girl at the Kuo Academy and had countless admirers, but she had never shown any friendliness, maintaining an utterly icy demeanor. Badr sighed inwardly. His desire to maintain an ordinary status was probably shattered just by being seen with Rias. Walking with such a breathtaking beauty made it hard not to attract attention. You seem to dislike being the center of attention. You always have a fake smile and keep everyone at a distance, Rias remarked casually. After being exposed by Rias, Badr fell silent for a moment before answering. In this world, it is not good to be either too outstanding or too ordinary. Oh, so you disguise yourself to keep a low profile and avoid being out of touch with society? Rias seemed to understand a little more and couldn't help but chuckle. You are a strange person. Do you dislike others that much? Badr remained unfazed and replied, It's not about disliking them. It's about not needing them. You have character, which is nice, Rias smiled. I hope we can become people you appreciate. Rias could see that gaining a significant place in Badr's heart would be challenging. He seemed like someone easy to get along with on the surface, but very difficult to approach on a deeper level. But so what? The character can be changed gradually. Rias had some confidence in that. The application process to join the club went smoothly. Rias gave simple instructions, and someone quickly handled the matter. It seemed that Rias had acquaintances in the student council. Badr joined Rias' occult research club, of which Rias was president. When he arrived at the club, two people were already waiting inside. One was Akino Himejima, the second most beautiful girl at Kuo Academy and another famous big sister figure. The other was someone Badr knew, Tuja Kaneko. Unlike Rias and Akino Himejima, who were mature and glamorous, Tuja Kaneko was a petite, lowly-like beauty with silver hair and golden eyes who looked exceptionally cute. However, Tuja Kaneko's face was expressionless, and she seemed pretty subdued as she sat there like a delicate doll. When they saw Rias bringing Badr in, Akino Himejima and Tuja Kaneko looked over and nodded at him. Badr, you must already know these two. Rias clapped her hands and sat on the sofa. Yes, we are classmates, Badr nodded. This is to make coordination easier. I'll put you all in the same class, so these two will be your companions from now on. Please take care of me. Akino Himejima greeted Badr with a gentle smile. Her speech had a distinct verbal quirk. Her smile was charming, and her high ponytail significantly enhanced her mature big sister aura. Kaneko also spoke politely, but her tone was calm and devoid of emotional fluctuation, indicating that she was reserved and somewhat aloof. Kaneko is one of my rook, who possesses formidable melee abilities, while Akino is a unique queen among the peasants. You'll have to fight alongside each other in the future, so you must communicate regularly, Rias added. Badr became curious. So, President, what rank am I? Rias remembered the transformation ritual and couldn't help but smile as he thought about it. Badr, you are the most unique of my devil servants. At first, I gave you the rank of knight, but that proved to be insufficient, so I finally gave you 2 knights and all the pawns. In other words, compared to other kings, Rias will have 9 fewer servants. Badr, the pressure on your shoulders is quite heavy, so don't let Rias down. Akino's cheerful remark left Badr somewhat speechless. After being killed and resurrected, only to become a servant destined for battle, judging from the description, he might even have to face 10 opponents at once. Why does it sound so miserable? But given the situation, what else could he say? Badr sighed softly and asked, Can you now explain the relationships between devils, fallen angels, and these other beings? Of course. Rias smiled and started to explain. Angels, fallen angels, devils, dragons, yokai, and humans all coexist in our world. Most angels live in the heaven, while devils live in the underworld. It sounded very similar to the Western mythologies Badr was familiar with. Having crossed over to such a world, Badr wondered if there was any connection to his previous world. Fallen angels, as the name implies, were once angels. However, Due to their corruption, they fell to the underworld. Since ancient times, fallen angels have manipulated humans to eradicate devils. And similarly, angels from the heaven have done the same, sparking a great war. Rias looked at Badr. With what I've explained, you should be able to understand, right? Angels and fallen angels inevitably turn out to be the antagonists in history, Badr remarked with a hint of sarcasm. If angels and fallen angels are inherently evil, then who were the fools who portrayed them as righteous? Still resentful after being attacked by a fallen angel, Badr felt a lingering bitterness. Not all of them are bad, Rias smiled, glancing at Aquino, who sat quietly with a gentle smile. Rias continued, since ancient times, countless brutal battles have existed between angels, fallen angels, and devils. As a result, the populations of all three sides were greatly diminished, and eventually, a peace treaty was signed. To Badr, this situation seemed no different from any in human history. Constant fighting followed by periods of rest and recuperation. Even today, though disputes still occasionally arise, the battles have diminished significantly. Dragons, yokai, and other races have primarily stayed out of the fray due to their small numbers. Badr finally understood the background of the world and why the fallen angel wanted to kill him. It seemed that they feared he would become powerful enough to destroy them. Badr scoffed inwardly, thinking that he had never intended to cause trouble, but had been victimized instead. Now, he would not rest until he had dealt with them. He thought about the sword and shield that had appeared out of nowhere. Clearly, these were the sacred gears he possessed, and he immediately asked about them. As for sacred gears, while they are said to be gifts from the gods, many are born naturally and choose their masters, with their origins often shrouded in mystery. How can I summon them? Badr asked eagerly. He didn't want to be caught off guard and not know how to summon it if attacked again. Once you successfully summon it, the gear will appear or disappear according to your will. You can try it. Rias shifted into a more comfortable position and put her legs on the sofa. Badr. Such an attitude was utterly unguarded. But Badr remained calm. After all, he had seen much more shocking things that morning. At this point, this level of exposure was practically irrelevant. Besides, it wasn't worth making a fuss about such a small matter. He had to concentrate on summoning the gear. Chapter 5. Fame and Gear True Power. Under the watchful eyes of three beautiful girls, Badr quickly focused his mind, attempting to summon the sword and shield that had appeared before. He felt a sense of calling, and the next moment his consciousness was in a boundless void. Although he could still feel his body, everything before his eyes was nothingness. The calling grew more apparent, and Badr searched for its direction, finally spotting a distant white light. With a thought, the white light, as if summoned, flew toward him, growing larger. As the white light approached, Badr's heart skipped a beat. Within the light, he saw a massive black city. The towering city walls, seemingly forged from refined iron, were grand and imposing, stretching endlessly. The walls were engraved with countless patterns of birds and beasts, and the black city exuded an astonishing aura. On the city walls stood soldiers in black armor, like statues. What is this place? Badr couldn't understand. The city before him, though awe-inspiring, felt like a dead city. His attention was drawn to the grand gate in the center of the city wall. At the top of the gate stood a statue. The statue depicted a man on a tall horse, but the man had no facial features. He sat on the horse, which reared its front hooves high, its mane flying, making the rider look heroic. In the statue's hands were a long silver sword and shield, the very sword and shield that had appeared before Badr. The silver sword and shield stood out vividly in this black and gold city. The white light Badr saw was the glow emitted by this sword and shield. Badr's consciousness reached the statue. As he gazed at the sword and shield, his vision blurred. In his mind, he saw a vast army charging. A man wielding a sword and shield led the army to victory. The scene shifted to a flag of triumph flying high, soldiers shouting, "Our king," and countless people kneeling in loyalty. But this king, after numerous battles to protect his people, was finally ambushed and killed. His blood stained the shield, and the sword in his hand was broken. That day, the heavens wept, an angry wind howled, and a blood rain fell as if the gods mourned him. The sword and shield, bathed in the king's blood, gained new life and extraordinary power. The king's sword and shield. The name appeared in Badr's mind, as if whispered by a gentle goddess, telling of its history as the weapon of a king of men, a benevolent king, hence the name. Badr regained consciousness and opened his eyes. A silver-white sword and shield appeared, floating before him. Era, what a powerful aura. There's a strong presence contained within this gear. Himejima, Akino murmured appreciatively. Badr slowly extended his hand, grasped the sword hilt, and drew it from the shield's unique sheath. The silver shield seemed to have a life of its revolving around him. A sword and shield, huh? You do look a bit like a knight, Rhea said with a satisfied smile, looking at Badr. Badr felt he could do more than this. It seemed he could summon the Black City as well. Just as he was about to try, Rhea's words stopped him. But the power of the gear isn't easy to control. You need to work hard to improve yourself. Forcing the gear's power can harm you. Badr immediately took heed. The Black City indeed seemed beyond his current ability to summon. He couldn't recklessly play around and risk self-destruction. After practicing several times and familiarizing himself with summoning the gear, Badr was satisfied. Rhea then said, "All right, you're free to move around now. I need to take a bath after last night's healing. Thank you for your hard work." Badr stood up to thank her, glancing at Kaneko Tuju, who had been eating snacks and bread since he entered the clubroom. Her quiet eating was quite cute. He nodded at her as a greeting and left the clubroom, returning to the classroom. Immediately, his classmates surrounded him, curious about how he managed to join Rhea's occult research club. Badr was speechless, thinking the club was full of devil girls, which they couldn't join. Outwardly, he smiled and said Rhea thought he was suited for the club, which led to many boys jealously beating their chests. Damn, why do you get to be close to President Rhea? Akino-senpai, Kaneko-chan. The boys' jealousy grew, and they howled in unison, so envious. Badr maintained his smile, inwardly bored. These adolescents, such trivial matters, why do they care? I've even slept naked in the same bed as Rhea. Did I care? Soon, Rhea and the others arrived in the classroom, greeting Badr. This action made the boys secretly grind their teeth at Badr again. Badr could only respond with silence. During a break, Rhea jokingly said to Badr, "You're famous now." "Heh, I don't need this fame," Badr replied, annoyed. "Oh, becoming popular and fitting in better isn't good?" Akino asked with a smile, sitting beside Badr. Badr shook his head and calmly said, "Why fit in? In the world of the ugly duckling, even swans are guilty. You can't force atmosphere, especially when Badr had nothing in common with them." Hearing his words, the three girls were momentarily speechless, unable to argue, and fell silent. Badr's nature was unique, but he was also somewhat aloof. Loneliness and aloofness are different. The lonely yearn for social interaction and fear solitude, while the aloof don't care about others' opinions, are self-centered, and often arrogant. Badr was undoubtedly the latter, but differed from typical aloof individuals. Most aloof people are unaware of their flaws, which can be annoying. Badr, however, was very aware and consciously hid and disguised it. To others, he seemed approachable, always able to find topics to talk about. But those who truly knew him found him incredibly intimidating. Fortunately, Rhea and the others knew Badr didn't disguise himself around them, and his mature and calm demeanor was apparent. Class time, I was passed peacefully, much like I had in ordinary school life. However, the powerful feeling within him constantly reminded Badr that he was no longer human. After school, it was time for club activities. Badr followed the school's rotation schedule and arrived at the club 10 minutes late. Upon entering, he heard the sound of running water. Someone was bathing in the club's bathroom. On the sofa lay folded clothes, with girls' undergarments neatly placed on top. The bathroom curtain was dim and semi-transparent, revealing a graceful figure bathing. Akino and Kaneko were in the clubroom, so the one bathing must be Rias. She loves bathing, Badr thought, nodding to Akino and Kaneko in greeting before sitting on the sofa. Noticing Kaneko eating again, Badr was speechless. She doesn't gain weight. Of course, a devilish beauty wouldn't get fat. Vice President. What's the usual club activity? Though we're called the Occult Research Club, that's just a front. We don't need to care about it. Our real task is distributing flyers and finding people willing to summon us devils to make contracts. Akino replied with a gentle smile, holding Rias's clothes for her to change into later. She wasn't just Rias's first servant, but also her sister and partner. Their relationship was very close, like an older sister caring for her younger sister. Flyers? Badr was puzzled. Do devils need to hand out flyers? Kaneko handed Badr a paper. Looking at it, Badr saw a purple magic circle drawn on it. As a devil, he could sense the faint magic from the paper. At this moment, the curtain opened, and Rias came out after her bath. Her hair was still wet and only wrapped in a towel, exposing her shoulders and collarbones. Her white legs were strikingly beautiful, and she walked barefoot on the clean floor. Tiny droplets clung to her white skin, her body exuding a faint mist, and a subtle fragrance wafted to Badr's nose. Rias's cold and alluring, mature and wild charm was fully displayed. Such a scene would make the boys at school wail in envy. But this beautiful sight was for Badr alone. Rias took the towel from Akino, who handed it to her, and continued the conversation. As I mentioned, we devils now gain power by distributing flyers to find humans to contract with. So, we need to advertise ourselves. Badr opened his mouth. Honestly, this was very different from his understanding of devils. Handing out flyers. So down to earth. As if knowing his thoughts, Rias smiled and explained. Usually, this job is done by familiars. We mainly fulfill the summoner's wishes, making them willingly sign contracts to gain power. We'll take you to find your familiar when the familiar forest opens next time. Akino patted Badr's shoulder with a gentle smile. For now, start with handing out flyers. It's an experience every devil needs. Since they said so, Badr had no objections, calmly taking the stack of summoning flyers. And I am heading out to distribute them. Along the road, Badr stood at a busy corner, holding a flyer and handing it to passers-by while saying, "Want to try summoning a devil? Only $1 for an experience." He found the phrase quite amusing. Some passers-by looked at him with puzzled expressions, but took the flyers out of curiosity. Looking at their reactions, Badr sighed and decided to be more proactive. Summoning a devil can fulfill all your desires. Only $1. Experience summoning, a chance to change your destiny. Finally, some people were moved and stopped to ask questions. After a long time, Badr ran out of flyers and returned to the club with sore legs. He reported his flyer distribution success to the 3 girls. Rias handed him a glass of water and gave a rare, gentle smile. "You've done well. Come and rest. Tomorrow, you'll probably receive your first summoning." As expected, the next day, Badr was summoned by someone. Chapter 6. Meeting Sakurajima Mai. Many humans in this world might be aware of the existence of devils. With a shrug, Badr decided not to dwell on it. He smiled professionally and began handing out flyers on the street. "Please take a look at our latest fortune-telling and wish-granting event." "Excuse me, this is our latest fortune-telling and wish-granting event. Please take a moment to learn about it." "Hello, please have a look." Badr had also handed out flyers in his previous life, and the work felt no different now. Most people would wave their hands in disinterest. Some wouldn't even bother to take a flyer, and only a few would reluctantly accept one out of politeness. Badr knew those people would likely throw the flyer away without looking at it. Only a handful might be curious enough to stop and chat for a moment. Nonetheless, Badr distributed most of his flyers after several hours of effort. Great, just a few more to go, and the job will be done. As he thought this, he saw a beautiful figure approaching. He quickly put on a practiced smile and stepped forward. "Hello, our club's latest fortune-telling and wish-granting event. Would you like to learn more?" The girl in front of him seemed a bit surprised. Surprising? You can see me? Badr looked slightly confused, tilting his head at the girl before him. Badr didn't quite understand what the girl meant by her words. What did she mean by saying he could still see her? He took a closer look at the girl. Although wearing a regular high school uniform, she gave off the impression of a mature beauty with a hint of laziness. Her slender limbs were perfectly proportioned, like a model from a display window, meticulously crafted to the finest proportions. Her eyes were deep, and her face was minor, yet severe, giving her an air of authority and a mature woman's charm. What do you mean by, you can still see me? Badr asked curiously. The girl responded calmly, just as it sounds. I see you clearly, Badr replied, though he was puzzled. Could she be a ghost? Was it because he was now a devil that he could see her? Rias and the others didn't mention the existence of beautiful ghosts in this world. Are you saying that others can't see you? Badr grew more cautious, given the strange events he had encountered recently. Although I don't want to admit it, that's true. It doesn't have a major impact, but is quite bothersome. The girl spoke calmly, her expression unchanged. Hearing this, Badr felt a bit relieved. The girl didn't seem threatening. At least Badr didn't sense any hostility from her. Otherwise, his devil instincts would have been triggered. Then take a look at our fortune-telling and wish-granting event. Perhaps one of your wishes could come true. Realizing that this girl could be an ideal contract target, Badr quickly extended an invitation. However, Badr couldn't shake the feeling that she looked familiar. Had he seen her somewhere before? While pondering this, the girl seemed somewhat comforted that Badr could see her. She reached out and took the flyer from him. Huh, what's this? A magic circle? Is this some superstitious propaganda? See, I knew it would be taken as superstition. Badr inwardly complained, but quickly regained his composure, flashing a professional smile. No, this is our club's fortune-telling and wish-granting event. It's very effective. It's said that carrying this brings good luck. Occult research club? The girl muttered, her eyes showing a hint of interest. Her current invisible state was indeed within the realm of mysticism. She kept the flyer and looked at Badr. I'll take a look when I have time. Goodbye. Thank you very much. Badr smiled, and the girl walked away after putting away the flyer. After walking some distance, she suddenly paused and looked back at Badr with a curious expression. Why do I feel something strange? Oh, it's because his smile looks so fake. Could he be a newcomer in the entertainment industry? She said this to herself, and then disappeared into the crowd. Unbeknownst to her, Badr heard her words. With his devil-enhanced body, he could hear sounds from hundreds of meters away. Badr thought his acting skills were good enough, but today, he met an expert who saw through him at a glance. No wonder she's a professional actress. Wait, an actress? Suddenly, Badr thought of something and froze. Why does she seem familiar? He looked up at a distant building, where a screen was playing an advertisement. The girl in the ad smiled sweetly. The same girl who had just left. Sakurajima Mai. He read the name of the brand ambassador in the advertisement and blinked. Not only was she an actress, but she was a big star. No wonder she saw through him. Instantly, he was an amateur compared to a professional. So, she wasn't a ghost? Badr pondered, realizing there might be humans with extraordinary abilities in this world, too. Well, with angels, devils, and monsters around, it's not surprising for humans to have extraordinary powers. Badr shrugged and resumed handing out the remaining flyers. He had distributed quite a few today. Hopefully, someone would trigger the summoning magic and summon him. Badr was eager to find contract targets. After all, devils could only gain strength from contracts, which made them more powerful. After finishing his work, Badr prepared to head home. Walking alone on the way back, Badr thought about Rias and the others' teleportation techniques. According to Himejima Akino, higher-ranked devils could only use those skills. At his current low level, Badr couldn't even attempt it. If only he could use teleportation, it would be much more convenient. To raise his rank, he needed to work hard to make contracts, which meant handing out flyers and finding contract targets. He was still at the very beginning stage. Badr sighed inwardly. Suddenly, he felt a tightness in his body, and his heart skipped a beat. This was his devil instincts alerting him to danger. A threat was approaching. Badr's steps slowed as he narrowed his eyes, looking ahead. By now, it was dark, and the surroundings were deserted, but Badr's night vision was better than in the daytime since becoming a devil. Black feathers fell from the sky as a seductive woman with black wings descended. A fallen angel? Badr frowned, silently cursing. He hadn't expected to encounter another fallen angel so soon. The fallen angel spotted Badr first. She was scantily clad, with only a few strips of cloth barely covering her body, surprisingly beautiful. However, despite her seductive appearance, her thick black eyeshadow gave her a creepy look. It's troublesome to have a low-level devil like you here. Killing a weakling like you is too boring. I don't even want to dirty my light spear. The fallen angel spoke with undisguised malice. Although the three factions had signed a peace treaty, their enmity remained unchanged. In simple terms, most angels, devils, and fallen angels wanted to kill each other on sight. Hearing the fallen angel's contempt, Badr naturally didn't hold back. He murmured with a smirk, "Seeing such a tacky slut at night makes my middle finger twitch." Fallen angel. Badr wasn't one to hold back. Sensing the fallen angel's killing intent, he calculated his chances of defeating her. Of course, he wouldn't be polite. His sharp words immediately enraged the fallen angel, her pupils narrowing like an angry tigress. Just a lowly devil daring to disrespect me. Her anger flared, and a barrier formed, covering the area. She raised her hand, summoning a light spear and hurling it at Badr. But Badr wasn't as passive this time as when he first encountered a fallen angel. His eyes tracked the light spear's trajectory. What was once unavoidable now seemed clear to him. Badr quickly jumped over 10 meters with a mighty leap, landing steadily. The light spear exploded, causing a massive shockwave that tore the surrounding plants. So, she's not that strong. Though more potent than the fallen angel he killed a few days ago, Badr's devil body and his sacred gear should give him a fighting chance. Badr judged that he could handle her attacks. Then, let's try to kill her. He remembered Rias's advice.